Michael Fenton Stevens is an actor and comedian best known for being a founding member of the Hee Bee Gee Bees and the voice behind the Spitting Image 1986 #1 hit, The Chicken Song. He also starred in KYTV, its Radio 4 predecessor Radio Active, and Benidorm as Sir Henry since Series 4, and as an anchor on Third and Bird on CBeebies. And Michael is on the line with us here, and I understand it's been quite the exciting day for you.
It's been, well, I wouldn't call it exciting. Trying more than exciting, yes. I've been all over the place. I had to go to London to try and pretend to some Spanish people that I would be a good Father Christmas, which, and it's very difficult because as I was about to go in for the audition, a man came out of the audition, and I think he was the real Father Christmas. He was about 6 foot tall, he was bald, he had rosy red cheeks, a great big white beard, and a very large belly that wobbled as he laughed. And I thought to myself, now hang on a minute, somebody's playing a trick on me here. Yeah. But maybe they don't want that, I mean, it depends. How do you see Father Christmas? I see him exactly as this man looked, but they may not want that.
Is this for something that would be going out in Spain then, if you do get the role?
Yeah, so I think that actually people forget that I've done lots of adverts for Spain over the years. I was once queuing up at the passport control in Barcelona, and the passport man looked at my photograph, and then he looked at me, and then he got out of his booth and he went across to the other booth, and he spoke to the man, and they both came across. And they looked at my passport, and they looked at, by this time, I cold sweat running down the back of my, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be dragged off to some Spanish jail. What have I done? And he leant over and he said to me, you teach me to speak English. And I said, what now? And he said, no, you teach me. You on the television. You teach me how to speak English. And I thought, oh, yes, I did, yes. Yes, that's right, yes. And a long time ago, I did a whole series of things for Spanish television where basically I played all the bits where you have an Englishman talking very slowly, like, can I have a stamp, please?
All right.
That sort of thing. And I played that person in all these little sketches. Strangely enough, with John Challis, who's also in Only Fools and Horses. We were in together, so he was in it.
And Benidorm.
And we did Benidorm together. What a great time we had doing that. They're just about to do the Benidorm Benicon, I think it's called, where everybody, Steve Pemberton is going to go there, turn up there, and people are going to pay a lot of money to go and hear them talk about being in Benidorm, which is, it's quite good fun. Unfortunately, I can't go, and I'm not sure that they would necessarily want me to, because I'm a bit disruptive. But
well, you've mainly played not main characters over the years.
No.
Was that a choice that you did to play small roles, or is that just how it's ended up being?
No, I don't think any actor chooses to play those roles. What happens is that, I've had opportunities have come my way over my career to play larger roles, but actually I think that very early on, because I never quite play the same person twice. I'm not a type, as it were. Although I've seemed to have fallen into the type of being, as I am now, a sort of older posh bloke, but I'm not that at all. It's all a front completely. I'm not a posh bloke. I am old, but I'm not a posh bloke. I come from very working class background. I come from, my family were all dockers in the southeast of London. So actually becoming an actor at all was an unusual thing to do. And I don't know, maybe I would have been more successful if I'd stuck with my original accent, because now I could have been in EastEnders for the last 20 years. But I didn't. I lost it. I went to university and I deliberately studied the people around me who'd all been to public school and that sort of thing, and thought, okay, I'll sort of mimic them. And that's what I've done. And I've always thought that if you wanted to be a classical actor, which I did when I first started, I wanted to be a proper theatre actor, because everybody dreams of that being what an actor is, So when you're thinking, I want to be an actor, you dream of being in theatre companies and playing Shakespeare and touring the world. But in fact, that's hardly anything to do with my career. I've done very little of that. I've had, the occasional lovely job like that. But I'm sort of glad, really. I don't think I could have spent my entire life on the road.
Yeah. Of course, one of the things you're best known for is the 1986 #1 hit, The Chicken Song.
I am, if people keep going on about it.
These days, it's a classic song that we all know and love. But
Do
back
you?
then, did you realise it was going to be so big?
No, not at all. No, in fact, we recorded it as part of a session for Spitting Image, where we recorded about 6 or 7 songs, I think. We spent a day in the studio recording songs for the series, songs that had already been written. Now, occasionally there would be songs that were written specifically for a week, and we would come in and record them, and they would go out that week. But generally, the comedy songs, they would be written, we would record them at the beginning of the series. And so we spent a day doing that, and one of them was this song, the Chicken Song, which was a sort of a parody of Agadoo by Black Lace, which was a hit at the time. And it's just a sort of a nonsense song. It's sort of a holiday party song. Everybody was dancing to it, but it was just stupid. And so that's the idea of it. The idea is that, the lyrics are rubbish. They don't make any sense. They're stupid. The tune just is incredibly repetitive, but with a key change constantly happening. And that's all it is. It was a joke. So we recorded it for the program and thought it was very good fun. At the time, we were all standing around. There were singers there who sung it. And Philip Pope said, "No, you sing it, Mike." He said, "You have a go at it, Mike. You have a go," because he thought it was in my range, and also wanted a sort of a Mancunian accent. And I could sing with different accents and voices. And he said, "So sing it like them." So there were much better singers than me who were hired to do Spitting Image, but generally they would be there to make it sound good. Yeah. The people like me were hired because we could do silly voices. So, all the lead songs that I sang on in Spitting Image are all sort of just silly little characters. There's a song called Condom where I played a condom, which I can't remember. I think my voice is a bit like that. I just think condom, got to be a condom. Anyway, so yes, we did this thing, and then they said after a few months, we're going to release it as a single. And we said, okay, thinking, yeah, that won't work. and amazingly, they said, would you like either 400% of your original fee? So our original fee for the day's session would have been about £300, I think, in those days. And so, would have been £1,000. We could have taken that and said, thank you very much, and walked away. Or they said, you can have a very, very small percentage of the sales. So everybody else who was on it were all sort of experienced session singers, and they knew the best thing was that if you were offered money, take it. So they all said, no, we'll take the fee. So they all took this fee, and ever since, when I've seen these people, they shout and scream at me because I didn't take a fee. I took this percentage, which turned out their £1,000. I got I think I got about 25.
Ooh, and counting?
Yeah. But it was quite a good thing to do. It was a lot of money. That's a lot of money in those days. You could buy a house with 25 grand in those days. So, yeah.
And I can't help but notice there is what looks like a gold disc from Australia in the background.
Oh, my word, yeah. There is, from Australia.
Is that for the chicken song, or is that for another thing?
No, that was for the Hee Bee Gee Bees.
Oh.
I was in a parody pop band with Philip Pope, who was the musical director of Spitting Image, who was the real genius behind it all, who could do all the voices and wrote all the music and everything. And I just sang on it. But we did originally a parody of the Bee Gees, a song called Meaningless Songs in Very High Voices.
Yes.
And it was very funny. And it still is very funny. I have to say, to this day, we still occasionally will perform it. We can just about reach the notes now. Yeah. And it works a dream. It's one of the funniest songs ever written, I would argue.
Yes.
Because it never fails to make people laugh hysterically.
Yeah.
And so, so that was right at the start of my career. That, in a way, is the thing that launched me into being an actor. Because I went to Edinburgh with a number of shows as a student, and then they said, "Do you want to be in the review, which is the late night review?" And I didn't really know what it was, and I said, "Yeah, well, it's just what sketches and things." So they said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So then Angus Deaton, who was in it, said to me, "Can you sing?" And I said, "I can." And he said, "Can you sing in falsetto?" And I said, "I can." He said, "Great, right, you're in." So we did this Bee Gees parody, and originally, I think when we first did the show, we did it about halfway through the show, but it had such an enormous effect on the audience that we very quickly moved it to the final number of the show to finish the show. And you could not get tickets to see the show we were doing because everybody in Edinburgh wanted to see this song. And after a week of doing it, somebody offered us a record deal. Will you record it? And then Jimmy Mulville, who owns and runs Hat Trick Productions, was a radio producer at the time, and he came and said, would you like to do a radio show for the BBC? I think all entirely based on the fact that we had this song. And we said, yeah, great. So by the end of Edinburgh, I was signed up for a BBC radio series, which turned out to be Radioactive, which we did 7 of, and then turned into KYTV. So we did 3 television series, all from that Edinburgh show. And we were signed up to record an album, which is what that gold disc behind me is from. Yeah. We then released it. It did very well here. We were number 2 in the London charts for a long, long time. We never quite got to number 1 because I think Elvis Presley had just died and his record was number 1. But we got to number 2 for ages, weeks and weeks. And then we released it, and we released it in Australia because we did a tour of Australia doing sort of radioactive sketch things. And again, it went to number 1 in Australia. And then the album did. And so I have a gold disc. Very exciting. So I've had 2 number 1s, one in Australia and one in England for 2 different songs. Yeah. Yes, anybody would think that, that's almost as successful as David Bowie was as far as number 1s are concerned. He didn't have many.
Yeah, and Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder, well, I think he had a few. Yeah, he didn't. It's amazing, the list of people who've had very few number 1s. And I always find it very embarrassing to realise that actually I probably have as many number 1s as, I don't know, Spandau Ballet.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Do you think that if you'd have started out today, you would have had all those opportunities happen in a chain reaction like that?
I don't know. I'm not sure it would have been as easy. I don't think people could have just walked up to you and said, would you like to do a radio series?
Yeah.
They certainly couldn't have done that. But maybe, record an album. That might have happened. I think that those opportunities came along constantly all the time at that period. It was an exciting time because, anybody could have an idea and then they just go to someone and they say, okay, do it. Not the 9 o'clock news with Rowan Atkinson and all, that crowd, produced by John Lloyd. He basically was working as a radio producer and he went to the BBC and said, I'd like to do a sketch show with some young people. And they said, okay. And that was it. They never came back, just get on with it. And he always says it's extraordinary that they just left him alone. And it became a huge television hit in the early 80s. Huge, absolutely enormous television hit, made millions and millions of pounds for the BBC. And it was all because they just let somebody who was talented put together a bunch of people who were talented and put out something that they, as people who ran the station, would never have thought of. Because, and that's a lesson to anybody of my age, is that the best thing to do with young people is to get out of the way.
I think the thing I personally know you best for is being in Benidorm, which must have been absolute fun to film.
The filming was always quite hard work. Yeah. The actual filming, because you've got to remember that a lot of it was done in blazing sunshine in Spain and also in Benidorm itself. So quite often surrounded by hordes of tourists who all wanted to have a photograph taken with people, all wanted people to sign stuff. So it made it very difficult. It's also, comically, it's quite a difficult show to do because it seems very broad. It seems very sort of seaside postcardy humour in places, but it's not all the time. Sometimes it's got real heart. Sometimes it's got real drama to it, and so you have to be aware of all the detail in each scene that you do. Also, it's played at pace. So you've got to really know your lines when you get there, in order to do it. You've got to be right on top of it. So all those things made that very hard. But the thing that made it most hard was the fact that we nearly always were recording with an enormous hangover. Because you just can't spend your time in Benidorm without being drawn into the world that is Benidorm. Yeah. Now, that may just, for some of us, that was going out to dinner. That was always the intention. We'd just go out to dinner. We finished filming, so we'll go down to the seafront. There's a lovely bar there. We'll sit there in the sunshine, have a couple of gin and tonics, have some dinner, and then go back and learn our lines for tomorrow and go to sleep. Yeah. jump forward to 4 o'clock in the morning with a drunken bunch of people in a karaoke bar somewhere singing "I Will Survive." It was brilliant fun and some brilliant people. I mean, I really, really love everybody who was on it. We had the most fantastic time. They were delightful to be with, very funny, very friendly, incredibly friendly show. I can't remember people falling out at all. We laughed at each other a lot. We laughed all day long, and then we went out and had the most fantastic time. It was just a perfect job. I wish that I'd been in every single scene in every single episode. I would have loved it.
And how long were you out there for? Because I think they filmed the show overall for like half the year. Were you there the whole time?
No, if you were one of the main characters, so if you were in the hotel or you were one of the holiday makers, the families that were there, then you were there the whole time. So they would be there for sort of 5 months.
Yeah.
But I would come in for a month and film. So each episode would take a couple of weeks. So if you were in 3 episodes, that would supposedly be 6 weeks that you would have to be there. But generally, they would bring you there 4 or 5 days before the thing started, and then you'd stay on for a little bit afterwards. Yeah. So I would always eke it out as much as possible because it was so much fun. And it also, they weren't necessarily filming the things at the same time. So they weren't just doing one episode. In order to schedule it, you might have scenes from other episodes going on. So you would be around. So I would be there probably for a couple of months, which is a long time and brilliant fun. Yeah. And also because I'm a character that came in and out and had, a few scenes in episodes, I'd have days and days where I could hire a car, go off around Spain, I'd, have lunches out, go for long walks. My wife came over. We had it was the most perfect job. Really brilliant.
Yeah. And it's such a shame that it's over now. It lasted 10 years and it was still as funny as ever. If it was still going today, I think it'd still be going strong, wouldn't it?
I think it would. I mean, I think that Darren, who writes it, would probably say that he'd be dead by now because it was very, very exhausting to write it all. And then he produced a lot of it as well. And then in the end, he was actually directing some of it.
Yeah.
So his involvement in it was really intense. So it was very hard work for him. He would spend, 7 months writing the thing, getting it ready to do it, and then 5 months filming it, and then he'd be straight back into writing the next one. So I think when it finally sort of came to an end, well, I'm sure he would have continued, given the opportunity. And he's, and we all miss doing it enormously. So it would be lovely to do it. But they've got Benicon is going on in about 2 weeks' time, and and some of the characters from very early on in it, actually the first 3 series, I think, so they're going to be over there.
Yeah, I think it's quite a good time of year to go to Benidorm. Actually, I'd quite like to be there right now.
Yeah, no, this is a good time. This is when the weather's nice. It's warm, but it won't be too hot. And you've got to remember that sometimes people were filming. We filmed once on this island doing John Challis and Sherry Hewson's wedding. Yeah, it was a very funny but incredibly grueling time because it was baking hot. It was getting close to 40 degrees, and we were on just this bare rock, surrounded by seagulls, hundreds and hundreds of seagulls that were nesting on this island. So every time we moved, they thought we were threatening them, so they would dive bomb us and attack. Yes, but it's great that Tony Hadley was in that episode, and he was. Oh yeah, it was brilliant fun, great. And I've known Tony from way, way back. I mean, right from that thing when I was doing the radio series, the BBC, when I was a very young man, and he had just started becoming famous with Spandau Ballet, but he went out with one of the secretaries from the BBC, so he was often around, and we would go drinking together. And he was as much fun and as absolutely normal as he was then. I mean, great fun. Shane Ritchie, it came over. We did a number of things together. I got on fantastically well with Shane Ritchie. He's just the most brilliant bubble of life. He just bursts life all the time, and has no qualms at all about being in the public and being approached by the public. I thought it was fantastic. I had a very strange night going through Benidorm with Shane Ritchie and Johnny Vegas, with the two of them competing with each other to see who could get the biggest crowd at the karaoke bar. So we went from bar to bar to bar, and we were followed the whole time by a crowd of about 500 drunken people. And every time we went into a bar, the man who ran the bar would think to himself, "Oh my God!" And he'd sell 500 drinks, and then they'd sing a couple of songs, we'd drink, and we'd move on. It was a brilliant night.
Did you ever go around Benidorm kind of still in character, like Shane still in his fake tan and the wig and everything?
Shane he's extraordinary when he does this. He doesn't mind at all people recognising him. You know, some actors, when they become famous, they sort of avoid it, or they try to disguise themselves. Johnny Vegas, for example, can't disguise himself. He's very obvious who he is, But I know Shane. When he first arrived, we were staying in the same hotel, and I met him beforehand, and he said, "Oh, Mike, great. Well, come on, you can show me around." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Should we go for a swim?" And I said, "Where do you want to go? There's a place that's got a pool over there." And he said, "No, in the hotel pool." And I said, "It's rammed. It's rammed full of people who are staying here." He said, "Yeah, I'll be all right." Well, we went down, and he spent about 4 hours just having photographs taken with people, calling people's mums on their phone. "Hello, darling. All right, yeah, Shane Ritchie. Hello, yeah. I know, it is me, it's Alfie Moon. That's right, yeah." It was absolutely brilliant. And I sat and watched him do it and just occasionally bought him a drink to keep him going. And he loved it. He loved it, and everybody loved him. He's a fabulous man.
Sounds like there's a little bit of Sammy Valentino in him.
A little bit, yeah. I think that's probably why he was given the job, you know. Yeah. I know that Tim Healy, playing his character, that sort of a transvestite, that was Tim's suggestion.
Yeah.
He met Darren at a party and said to him, you know, "Why can't I be in your show? I'd love to be in your show." And Darren said, "Well, you know, think of a character." And he said, "Well, you know, like I could be like a transvestite."
Thought he was in the room.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And he said, "That's a good idea." And Tim said, "I went away from this party drunk, not thinking about it. Next day I got a phone call from my agent saying, 'Would you like to be in Benidorm?'"
Now, you've launched your own podcast
called
My Time Capsule. Explain the format of it.
Well, I think it's quite simple. It's basically a podcast where I ask people to think of 5 things from any time in their life that they wish they had in a time capsule. Yeah. So they could revisit them or keep them safe. So they can be anything. They can be ephemeral things. They can be seemingly insignificant things, like an old piece of clothing or a hat, or Stephen Fry chose the smell of his granddad's pipe. You know, it's those sort of things that take you right back to a moment in your life that you treasure and you'd like to revisit. And then we talk about those things and why they've chosen them. So they choose 4 things that they cherish, that they want to put in there because they love them. And they remind them of times and places or people or things that they've loved. And 1 thing that they want to put in there because they'd like to forget it. They want to put it in there and bury it and never think about it again. And it's quite interesting. And when I started it, I thought, well, that's a simple idea. It's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but it's about things rather than music. You know, so it's a bit of a cheat, really, but I don't mind. I don't mind cheating, and people don't seem to mind. They treat it very differently from Desert Island Discs, and I've had the most extraordinary responses from people.
Yeah.
You would think that people would just be sort of light-hearted about it, but no. Occasionally, it's become really emotional. It's not what I expected at all. And it's turned out to be incredibly revealing.
And I'm just struggling myself to think of what my things would be. So I take it your guests probably have to spend a lot of time before they come on thinking about what they're going to pick.
Some of them do. Some of them, they sit down. Some say, I've been racking my brain for days and days and writing lists and, narrowing it down. But I generally say to people, well, go with the thing that first comes in your head, because that's almost certainly the thing. You know. But other people have said, do you know, I haven't had time to think about this, Mike. I've been very busy, because I do tend to talk to some quite famous people. Yeah. And it's kind that they're going to come on and do it with me, but I'd be unfair if I expected them also to do hours of homework. So they'll come on to the meeting, the Zoom meeting, generally like this we do it, most of them, occasionally face-to-face, but mostly this way. And they'll say, I haven't really had a thought. Talk me through it again, Mike. What do I do? And I say, well, it's 5 things from your life 4 you love and 1 you hate. And they go, okay. So anything? Can it be like a place or anything at all? They go, okay. I had a teacher, and then off they go.
Yeah.
And it's whatever comes into their mind. And then one thing will tend to lead them to another. And by the end, they're going, oh no, I should have put that in. Oh, well, never mind. And then it's quite interesting to hear the things that actually people that didn't come to mind, so some of the things that you've thought of but rejected.
Do you have to take their first answer then, if they've said 4 things, and then have a 5th one?
I don't have any real rules to it. I'm not a stickler for rules in these situations. Sometimes people will say, oh no, I really want to put that in, which I can't think which one to reject. And I say, okay, well, I don't care. Let's make it 6 then. I don't mind. It's a means for having an interesting chat with people about things that they wouldn't normally talk about, and about areas or times in their life that wouldn't normally come up in an interview, in a chat like this. So that's what I'm aiming for. For example, John Lloyd, who I mentioned earlier, I went to see him at the QI offices, and we sat in a recording studio, which was very nice. And I briefed him on it, and he talked about it, and he said, yeah, no, I've got it. Okay, yeah, 5 things. Okay, right. Shall we start? And I said, yeah. I said, it's not formal. We'll just ramble into it, as it were. We just drifted into conversation. And we did. And we talked for an hour and 15 minutes. And at the end of it, I said, John, thank you. That was really interesting. And we hadn't talked at all about things we were going to put in a time capsule. Not once. And I just thought, well, there's no point in forcing him down this road, because everything he's saying is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And really revealing. And so we were doing what I hoped, the system would do, but we didn't need it. But generally, people do. And it's very interesting, because you end up talking about their childhood and their parents and, their schools, those sort of things.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't talk to people. You talk to people about what's the film you've just made, or what's the latest book you've written. So, yeah, it was very interesting. It has been. I've really enjoyed doing it. And I do a lot of them. I've done nearly 250 episodes now.
Wow.
With all sorts of people. And I've jumped from sportsmen, like Linford Christie I've interviewed, to producers, writers, directors, mostly actors, lots of stand-up comedians, people I've known for a long time, and people I've only just met or am meeting for the first time, like we are on Zoom. And yet the intimacy that you get with somebody is immediate. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Now, what's coming up for you, both in terms of the podcast, the people coming up, and also in terms of maybe acting things that are about to come out?
Yeah, I've done some really nice things in the last couple of years. Strange enough, I seem to have drifted. I don't know how this has happened. I seem to suddenly be regarded as a serious actor. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Have they not seen my other work? So I've been doing some really lovely stuff. I was in Slow Horses, which is a thing. The great problem with television these days is that you can talk about things. Slow Horses is an absolutely massive television program, but most people in this country wouldn't have seen it because I think it's on Apple TV. And therefore, why would you see it unless you are, we don't have many, it's a lot of money if you're going to go to Apple and Disney and Netflix and Prime and everything, all the different things you can go to. And I've got a television series coming up on Netflix, which I think a lot of people do subscribe to. So that's called Hapless. It's a very, very funny, very dark comedy. And so I'm looking forward to that coming out, which I do with Tim Downey, who's a brilliant comic actor. So that's been great fun. And also I'm in a thing that Armando Iannucci produces, who does all the Alan Partridge shows. And he's one of our great producers. But he it was directed by David Schneider as well, who's also really lovely. And it's got Hugh Laurie in it and lots of American stars, Josh Gad, Rebecca Front, and all sorts of people like that. It's called Avenue 5. And it's on in America at the moment. If anybody listens and they're in America, it's on HBO, but it'll be on here soon. But again, I think it'll probably be on something like, I don't know what it's going to be on. Who knows? I'll probably never see it because I'm still. Is it on BBC One? Is it on BBC? I might turn to BBC Two, but I'm not going much further than that. I don't know what the other buttons do. That's almost my television viewing.
Well, where are we able to keep up to date with you and follow you on social media and places like that?
I'm more active on Twitter than anything else, but we'll see what happens in the new Musk era, and whether we'll see what happens to Twitter. It may become a place where we don't want to be, But I think you can create your own little bubbles, can't you? In these places, you can create the world that you want to be in on social media. And so if you don't like the vitriol that can be sprayed at people on Twitter, then get rid of it, then block it, then throw it away, I say. And by us all doing that thing of editing, we may well end up in our own little bubbles and not find out what anybody else is saying. But I think hopefully the people who are talking bollocks, to be frank, will become quieter and quieter. Fewer and fewer people will hear them. They'll live in their own little world of vitriol, and the rest of us can just ignore them and get on with being pleasant. And actually, I find that Twitter, amazingly, although quite a number of people I've had on podcasts have chosen Twitter as a thing to put in to forget and never think of again. But I find it quite a pleasant world. I very, very rarely have anything on it that I go, and if I do, I have something that I find objectionable. I say to people, well, go easy, no need for that. And usually people then will say, yeah, sorry, I got a bit carried away. I've done the same thing. I've apologized to people. I'm so sorry, I got a bit carried away.
Yeah.
And that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah. For some completely unknown reason, you don't seem to have a blue tick yet. But would you pay for one for $8 a month?
No, I'm not really interested in a blue tick either, actually. I think that it's a strange thing, isn't it, that supposedly, because, I mean, the idea of a blue tick is that it verifies that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fairly obvious that I'm who I say I am, because you just have to look at the tweets and they'll be from me about things that I would know about. And so I don't think I need a blue tick to verify that it's me. And I don't think there are many other people who would impersonate me and pretend to be me, so I'm not worried about that being the case. I can understand if you're extremely famous that people will just find something that looks like you, and then they'll start tweeting about you as if it's you, but generally you can tell if it's the real person by how many followers they've got.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure that a blue tick is necessary at all, but I certainly won't be paying for it.
Although sometimes you see a profile of a famous person that's got loads of followers, and then you look at the bio and you only just notice that it says parody.
Right, yeah. Well, I think that's probably because they enjoy the parody. They've got the followers because they like the joke.
Yeah.
They get the joke, But yes, in fact, a number of times I've have just tagged people in and what things, and then somebody will say, oh, I'm not them, I'm just a real fan, I just follow them all the time. I say, well, why are you using their name then? That's not
weird.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I'm not an expert in these things, but if you wanted to find me, you can certainly find me there. But I do Instagram and Facebook, and I've not got into the editing skills of being able to do TikTok yet.
Yes.
But give me time.
Ooh, we'll look forward to when that does come. And many thanks for joining us today. It's been great to talk to you.
It's lovely to talk to you. Thanks very much.